The rain hammered against the windows of Westfield Tech Solutions as Victoria Hart stood in the marble lobby, shaking droplets from her coat. She had imagined this moment for weeks, her first day at one of the most innovative architectural firms in Seattle. The building itself was a masterpiece of modern design, all clean lines and soaring glass walls that made her feel both inspired and slightly intimidated. Victoria smoothed down her emerald blouse and checked her reflection in a nearby window. At 26, she had finally landed the position she had been working toward since graduating with her design degree. Project coordinator might not sound glamorous, but at Westfield, it meant working directly with the best architects in the industry. It meant her ideas would actually matter. A cheerful voice called out from across the lobby. "You must be Victoria. I'm Jordan Pierce from the design team." Victoria turned to see a man with sandy blonde hair and an easy smile approaching her. He wore a casual blazer over a graphic tee, the kind of effortlessly cool look that took actual effort to pull off. His hazel eyes sparkled with genuine warmth. "Guilty as charged," Victoria replied, returning his smile. "I'm a bit early. Nervous energy, I suppose." "Smart move. Our creative director likes punctuality almost as much as he likes impossible deadlines." Jordan gestured toward the elevators. "Come on, I'll show you to your desk before the morning. Chaos begins." As they rode up to the 7th floor, Jordan filled her in on office dynamics. The way he talked, with animated hand gestures and occasional tangents, made her relax. By the time they reached her workspace, Victoria felt like she had made her first friend. "So that office there," Jordan pointed to a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows, "belongs to Sebastian Cross. He's the creative director and basically a genius. Also basically impossible to please, but don't let that intimidate you." "I don't intimidate easily," Victoria said, meaning it. "Good, because he'll probably call you in within the first hour. He likes to test new people, see what they're made of." Jordan checked his watch. "I've got a meeting, but let's grab coffee later. I want to hear all about what convinced you to join this madhouse." Before Victoria could respond, an intercom on her desk crackled to life. "Miss Hart, my office. Now would be preferable to later." The voice was deep and carried an edge of impatience that made Victoria's spine straighten automatically. Jordan grimaced sympathetically. "Good luck. Remember, he's not actually a dragon. He just breathes fire occasionally." Victoria gathered a notebook and pen, took a breath, and walked toward the corner office. Through the glass walls, she could see a figure bent over a drafting table, shoulders tense with concentration. She knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. If this Sebastian Cross wanted to test her, she would show him she did not scare easily. The office was stunning. Plans and sketches covered every surface, and a scale model of what looked like a museum occupied an entire table. The man who straightened from the drafting table was not what Victoria had expected. Sebastian Cross was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that fell across his forehead as if he had been running his hands through it. Sharp cheekbones, intense gray eyes, and an expression that suggested he was perpetually annoyed with the world around him. He wore a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms marked with faint pencil smudges. "You're 7 minutes late," he said without preamble. Victoria glanced at the clock on the wall. "My start time was 8:30. It's 8:29. When I call someone to my office, I expect them immediately, not after they finish chatting with Jordan Pierce in the hallway." So he had been watching. Victoria filed that information away. "In the future, I'll sprint, though I should warn you, I'm not particularly athletic. There might be casualties along the way." Sebastian's eyes narrowed. "Are you attempting humor, Miss Hart?" "I'm attempting honesty. I'm new, I don't know your expectations yet, and I thought arriving before my actual start time demonstrated initiative." Victoria met his gaze steadily. "But if you'd prefer an employee who pretends to read your mind and apologizes for things that aren't actually problems, I can do that too. It'll be disingenuous, but I can manage it." For a long moment, Sebastian simply stared at her. Then something shifted in his expression, too quick to identify. "I received your portfolio. Your design work shows promise, though your rendering techniques need refinement." "I'm aware. That's partially what I hope to learn here." "Partially," he repeated. "What's the other part?" "How to work on projects that actually matter. Projects that change skylines and challenge conventions." Victoria gestured toward the model museum. "Projects like that." Sebastian picked up a tablet from his desk and handed it to her. "This is the Riverside Complex. Mixed-use development, 20 stories, due to break ground in 8 months. I want your analysis of the current plans, structural concerns, aesthetic, weaknesses, potential improvements, on my desk by end of day tomorrow." Victoria scrolled through the plans. They were extensive, complex, and would take hours of careful study. "Tomorrow's tight but manageable. Do you want a written report or presentation format?" "Whichever best conveys your ideas. I care about substance, not packaging." "Understood." Victoria turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Mr. Cross, one question. Do you actually test all new employees like this, or am I special?" The corner of his mouth might have twitched. Might have. "Let's just say I have high standards. Most people fail to meet them. We'll see which category you fall into." "I'll take that as a challenge," Victoria said, and walked out with her head high. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of introductions, system passwords, and orientation. Materials. By lunch, Victoria's head was spinning with information. Jordan appeared at her desk with 2 sandwiches and an encouraging smile. "Survived your first cross encounter, I see. You're still standing, which puts you ahead of half the people who've worked here." They ate lunch in the break room, and Victoria found herself genuinely enjoying Jordan's company. He was funny and self-deprecating, with a talent for office. Gossip that was entertaining rather than mean-spirited. When he suggested they check out a new art installation downtown after work, Victoria agreed without hesitation. What she did not notice was Sebastian watching them through his office window, his expression darkening with each shared laugh. His grip on his coffee mug tightened until his knuckles went white, and when Jordan casually touched Victoria's shoulder while making a point, Sebastian turned sharply away from the window and threw himself back into his work with unusual force. The pattern repeated itself over the following weeks. Victoria would arrive early, work late, and consistently deliver excellent results. Her analysis of the Riverside complex had been thorough and insightful enough that Sebastian had actually implemented 2 of her suggestions. Not that he had thanked her. His only acknowledgement had been a curt nod and another assignment. But parallel to her professional progress ran something else entirely. Every interaction with Sebastian was charged with an energy Victoria could not quite name. They challenged each other constantly. When she presented an idea, he would poke holes in it until she either defended it brilliantly or conceded the point. When he critiqued her work, she would push back if she disagreed, forcing him to explain his reasoning. Their colleagues started, referring to their exchanges as the daily sparring match. And through it all, Jordan was there. Kind, uncomplicated Jordan, who brought her coffee and made her laugh and never made her feel like she was constantly being tested. They started having lunch together most days. He invited her to gallery openings and architectural lectures. Victoria appreciated the friendship, enjoyed his company, and tried not to think about how Sebastian's mood always seemed to sour whenever he saw them together. One Friday afternoon, Victoria was at her desk reviewing blueprints when Jordan stopped by. "Hey, there's a Frank Lloyd Wright exhibit opening tonight at the Modern Art Museum. Want to go? I know you're a fan." "That sounds perfect," Victoria said enthusiastically. "What time?" "I'll pick you up at 7. It's a date." The words came out automatically, a casual phrase Victoria had used 100 times before. But this time she felt eyes on her and looked up to see Sebastian standing in his office doorway. His expression was unreadable, but something in his posture radiated tension. Their eyes met for a charged moment before Sebastian turned and walked back into his office, closing the door with more force than necessary. Victoria tried to ignore the strange flutter in her chest. She tried to focus on the blueprints in front of her. But her mind kept drifting to gray eyes and sharp words, and the way the air seemed to crackle whenever she and Sebastian were in the same room. Something was building between them, something neither of them wanted to acknowledge. And Victoria had the distinct feeling that it was only a matter of time before that tension exploded into something neither of them could control. The Frank Lloyd Wright exhibit had been spectacular. Victoria spent 2 hours with Jordan wandering through displays of organic architecture and revolutionary designs, discussing the integration of nature and structure. Jordan was an attentive companion, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own perspectives. When he dropped her off at her apartment building, he had leaned in for a brief, sweet kiss that left Victoria feeling pleasantly confused. She liked Jordan. He was easy to be around, made her laugh, and shared her passion for architecture. There was no reason not to pursue something with him, no reason except for the fact that her mind kept drifting to someone else entirely, someone infuriating and demanding who made her heart race for completely different reasons. Monday morning arrived with dark clouds and an email that made Victoria's stomach sink. Sebastian had assigned her to lead the presentation for the Riverside complex, which would be delivered to the investors in 2 weeks. It was a massive opportunity and a crushing responsibility. The email was characteristically brief, ending with a single line that made her jaw clench. "Try not to disappoint me." Victoria threw herself into preparation with fierce determination. She worked through lunches, stayed late into the evenings, and filled her apartment walls with sketches and notes. Jordan checked on her regularly, bringing food and offering encouragement. His support was genuine and appreciated, but Victoria found herself declining his invitations to go out. She had too much work to do. What she did not realize was that Sebastian was watching her progress with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He found reasons to walk past her desk, to check on her work, to offer cutting critiques that pushed her to refine every detail. Their interactions grew sharper, more heated. When Victoria defended her choices, Sebastian would lean closer, his gray eyes burning with something that felt like more than professional interest. One evening, Victoria was alone in the conference room, surrounded by presentation boards and her laptop, when Jordan appeared with takeout containers. "You've been here for 12 hours. Time for a break." "I can't. The presentation is in 9 days, and I still need to revise the financial projections." Victoria rubbed her tired eyes. Jordan set the food down and moved behind her chair, gently, massaging her shoulders. "You're going to burn yourself out. Sebastian is a taskmaster, but even he would understand that you need rest." "Sebastian would understand nothing except that I failed to meet his impossible standards," Victoria said, but she leaned into Jordan's touch. It felt nice to be cared for, to have someone worried about her well-being. The conference room door opened with a sharp click. Sebastian stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. His gaze moved from Jordan's hands on Victoria's shoulders to the intimate proximity of their positions, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Pierce, don't you have your own work to complete?" Sebastian's voice was ice cold. "Just making." "Sure, Victoria, eat something," Jordan replied evenly, though his hands dropped from her shoulders. "She's been working non-stop." "How thoughtful. I'm sure Miss Hart appreciates your concern for her nutrition. However, if she's going to lead this presentation, she needs to focus on the work, not on socializing." Victoria felt anger spark in her chest. "I've been focused on nothing but this presentation for a week. Taking 20 minutes to eat is hardly socializing. Sebastian's eyes locked onto hers. Pierce, leave us. Miss Hart and I need to discuss the presentation. Jordan hesitated, looking at Victoria with concern. She nodded slightly, and he gathered the takeout containers. I'll check on you later, he said softly before leaving, closing the door behind him. The silence that followed was thick and charged. Sebastian moved further into the conference room, his presence seeming to fill the entire space. He examined the presentation boards with a critical eye, saying nothing for a long moment. Your work is adequate, he finally said, though the financial section lacks depth. Adequate. Victoria stood up, exhaustion and frustration making her bold. I've worked 80 hours in the past week. I've revised these plans 6 times based on your feedback. I've barely slept or eaten, and all you can say is adequate. Would you prefer I lie to you? Tell you it's perfect when it's not? Sebastian turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You have potential, Victoria, but potential means nothing if you allow distractions to derail your focus. Distractions. You mean Jordan. I mean anyone or anything that takes your attention away from becoming the architect you're capable of being. Sebastian moved closer. Close enough that Victoria could see the faint lines of stress around his eyes, smell his cologne mixed with coffee and paper. You're talented, perhaps more talented than you realize, but talent without discipline is wasted. And you think spending time with Jordan wastes my talent. Victoria's heart was pounding, though whether from anger or something else she could not tell. I think Jordan Pierce is a competent designer who will never be more than competent because he's content with good enough. Sebastian's voice dropped, lower. You're not like him. You have fire, ambition, a hunger to create something meaningful. I see it in your work, in the way you fight me on every critique. Don't dull that fire for someone who can't match it. You don't get to tell me who I spend my time with. Victoria stepped closer, her chin lifting in defiance. You're my boss, not my keeper. No, I'm the person who recognizes what you could become. Sebastian's hand lifted, almost touching her face before he caught himself and dropped it. The person who pushes you because I refuse to watch you settle for less than extraordinary. And what about what I want? Victoria's voice came out softer than she intended. What if I want someone who's kind and supportive instead of someone who makes me feel like I'm constantly being judged? Is that really what you want? Sebastian's eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Safe and comfortable, and unchallenged? Or do you want someone who sees every brilliant, infuriating, magnificent thing about you and refuses to let you hide from your own potential? The air between them felt electric. Victoria's pulse raced as she stared up at Sebastian, seeing something raw and vulnerable beneath his usually controlled exterior. This was not about the presentation anymore. Maybe it had never been about the presentation. You're jealous, Victoria whispered, the realization hitting her with stunning clarity. All this time, the criticism, the impossible standards, the anger whenever Jordan and I are together. You're jealous. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Don't be absurd. I'm not. I'm right. Victoria's hands trembled slightly. That's what this is. That's what all of this has been. And if you're right? Sebastian's voice was rough, strained. What difference does it make? I'm your boss. This, he gestured between them, can't happen. But you want it to. It was not a question. What I want is irrelevant. Sebastian started to turn away, but Victoria caught his arm. It's not irrelevant to me. Sebastian looked down at her hand on his arm, then back at her face. Something in his carefully constructed control seemed to crack. Victoria, don't! Don't what? Don't acknowledge that every time we're in the same room, the air feels charged? Don't admit that I spend half my time wanting to argue with you and the other half wanting to do something much different? You're with Jordan, Sebastian said, but his resolve was clearly weakening. I'm not with Jordan. We went on one date, and the entire time I was thinking about someone else. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs. I was thinking about you. The confession hung between them for one breathless moment. Then Sebastian's control shattered completely. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands cupping her face as he kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath. Victoria responded instantly, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. The kiss was nothing like Jordan's sweet, gentle touch. This was fire and fury and months of denied attraction exploding into something neither of them could contain. Sebastian's fingers threaded through her hair, tilting, her head back as he deepened the kiss. Victoria pressed against him, feeling the rapid beat of his heart matching her own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in waves. Victoria touched her lips, her mind spinning. We just crossed every professional boundary that exists. Sebastian rested his forehead against hers, his hands still tangled in her hair. I know. I should apologize. But I'm not sorry. Neither am I, Victoria admitted. But we need to figure out what this means. What happens now? Before Sebastian could answer, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made them spring apart. Victoria quickly moved back to the conference table, her hands shaking as she shuffled papers. Sebastian ran a hand through his disheveled hair, trying to regain his composure. The door opened and Jordan stood there, his expression shifting from friendly to confused as he took in the scene. Victoria's flushed face, Sebastian's tense posture, the charged atmosphere that still hung in the air. I forgot my jacket, Jordan said slowly, his eyes moving between them. But I can come back later if this is a bad time. It's fine, Victoria said too quickly. We were just finishing up. Jordan grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair, his movements careful. Right. Well, good night then. After he left, Victoria sank into a chair, the weight of what had just happened settling over her. This is complicated. Yes, Sebastian agreed, his voice carefully neutral again. It is? I need time to think. Victoria gathered her things with shaking hands. About all of this. Sebastian nodded, though his expression showed the cost of his restraint. Take the time you need. But Victoria, this conversation isn't finished. As Victoria left the office and stepped into the cool night air, she knew her world had just shifted on its axis. Everything was about to change, and she had no idea if she was ready for what came next. Victoria barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt Sebastian's lips on hers, remembered the intensity in his gray eyes, the way her entire body had responded to his touch. By morning, she had made a decision. She needed to be honest with Jordan before things went any further. She found him in the break room during the morning coffee rush, his usual easy smile dimming when he saw her serious expression. Can we talk somewhere private? Victoria asked quietly. Jordan's face showed he already knew this conversation would not be pleasant. They walked to an empty meeting room and Victoria closed the door behind them. Last night, she began, then stopped, struggling to find the right words. Jordan, you've been wonderful to me. Kind and supportive and everything anyone could want. But, Jordan supplied, his voice resigned. But I can't keep seeing you when my feelings are confused. Victoria met his eyes, owing him that much honesty. You deserve someone whose attention isn't divided, someone who can give you everything. And I'm not that person right now. Jordan was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. It's Cross, isn't it? The way you two interact, the tension between you. I've seen it for weeks, but I thought maybe I was imagining things. I'm sorry, I never meant to lead you on or hurt you. I know. Jordan managed a sad smile. And honestly, I'm not entirely surprised. The two of you have chemistry that's impossible to miss. I just hoped maybe I had a chance anyway. He stood, straightening his shoulders. For what it's worth, I think you're making this harder than it needs to be. Yes, he's your boss, but feelings don't follow workplace rules. After Jordan left, Victoria felt both relieved and terrified. She had cleared away one complication, but the larger problem remained. What exactly was she doing with Sebastian, and where could it possibly lead? The answer came faster than she expected. That afternoon, Sebastian called her into his office, his expression unreadable. Victoria's heart raced as she closed the door behind her. "I spoke with Human Resources this morning," Sebastian said without preamble, "about potential conflicts of interest and company policies regarding workplace relationships." Victoria's stomach dropped. "You're transferring me?" "No." Sebastian moved from behind his desk, leaning against it. "I'm stepping back from direct supervision of your projects. Starting next week, you'll report to Catherine Mills in the design department. I'll remain creative director, but there will be proper separation between us professionally." "You're restructuring your entire department because of one kiss?" Victoria could not keep the shock from her voice. "I'm restructuring because what I feel for you is not something that will disappear with time or distance." Sebastian's gaze was steady, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. "And because I refuse to put you in a position where your professional growth is compromised by our personal involvement." "Our personal involvement," Victoria repeated. "Is that what we're calling this?" "I don't know what to call it yet." Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she was beginning to recognize. "All I know is that I've spent months trying to ignore how I feel about you. Months telling myself that my interest was purely professional, that I pushed you because I saw your potential, not because I found excuses to be near you." "When did it start?" Victoria asked softly. "When did it become more than professional?" Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. "Your first day, when you stood in my office and refused to be intimidated, when you challenged me instead of simply agreeing. I told myself I admired your spirit, but somewhere along the way, admiration became something much more complicated." Victoria stepped closer to him. "And the jealousy when Jordan was around?" Excruciating. A ghost of a smile touched Sebastian's lips. "Watching him make you laugh, knowing he could offer you something simple and uncomplicated while I could only offer criticism and impossible standards. I hated it, hated him, though he's done nothing wrong, hated myself for wanting something I had no right to want." "Sebastian!" Victoria reached out, her hand finding his. "You're not the only one who's been confused. Every time we argued, every time you pushed me harder than I thought I could go, I felt alive in a way I never had before. Jordan is wonderful, but he doesn't challenge me. He doesn't see all the things I could be and refuse to let me settle for less." "I need you to understand something," Sebastian said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "If we do this, if we try to make this work, it won't be easy. People will talk. They'll say you got opportunities because of our relationship, that I show you favoritism. Your achievements will be questioned." "Let them talk." Victoria squeezed his hand. "I know what I've earned, and so do you. Besides, you've never shown me favoritism. If anything, you've been harder on me than anyone else. Because I knew you could handle it. Because I saw someone extraordinary and refused to let you be merely good." Sebastian's free hand came up to cup her face. "Victoria, I'm not easy to be with. I'm demanding and critical, and I have very little patience for anything less than excellence. I know, trust me, I know." Victoria smiled despite herself. "But I'm stubborn and argumentative, and I'll push back every time I think you're wrong. I'm counting on it." Sebastian's expression softened in a way that transformed his entire face. "So where does that leave us?" "Starting over, maybe. Getting to know each other outside of work stress and professional boundaries." Victoria leaned into his touch. Actual dates instead of late-night work sessions. Conversations that don't involve blueprints or deadlines. I should warn you, I'm terrible at traditional romance. I'll probably critique the restaurant's architecture or get distracted analyzing building designs. And I'll argue with you about it, and we'll both enjoy the debate far too much. Victoria laughed. We're going to be that couple, aren't we? The one that argues about everything but somehow makes it work. I certainly hope so. Sebastian pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. Though first, you have a presentation to deliver, and despite everything else, I still expect excellence. Wouldn't have it any other way, Victoria murmured, before kissing him again, this time without the desperate urgency of the night before. This kiss was softer, full of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, Sebastian kept her close, his arms wrapped around her waist. The presentation is going to be brilliant, you know, even without my interference. I learned from the best, Victoria said. A demanding, impossible taskmaster who pushed me harder than I ever pushed myself. And fell for you somewhere along the way, Sebastian admitted quietly. The following 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Victoria delivered the Riverside Complex presentation to thunderous approval from the investors. Her transition to Catherine's supervision went smoothly, and Catherine proved to be an excellent mentor. And through it all, Sebastian kept his professional distance at work while building something real with Victoria outside the office. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant where they did indeed argue about the building's structural design. Their second was at an architectural lecture where Sebastian's hand found hers in the dark. Their third was a simple walk through the city, pointing out buildings they loved and buildings they would redesign given the chance. 3 months later, Victoria stood in Sebastian's apartment, looking at the blueprints spread across his dining table. They were plans for a community center she had designed, her first independent project. Sebastian studied them with the same critical eye he had, always used, but now his criticism came with encouragement, with recognition of how far she had come. This is exceptional work, he said finally, and the pride in his voice made Victoria's heart soar. Though I think the eastern wall could use more windows. I knew you'd say that. Victoria moved beside him, pointing to her notes. I already have alternate plans with additional fenestration. Wanted to see if you'd catch it. Sebastian laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Still testing me. Always, Victoria said, sliding her arms around his waist. Someone once told me that potential means nothing without discipline, that I should never settle for good enough when I could be extraordinary. Smart man, Sebastian murmured, kissing the top of her head. Infuriating man, Victoria corrected, but mine nonetheless. Outside the windows, Seattle's skyline glittered with possibilities. And inside, 2 people who had found each other through challenge and conflict and undeniable chemistry began building something neither had expected but both had needed all along. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared passion, and the understanding that the best relationships are the ones that push you to become everything you were meant to be.